Hello, hello. We are back for another positive talk. Hopefully, you all have been having a good time. I know that I had a very eventful weekend, definitely life changing in when it comes to mind shifting. But I tested negative for COVID, so I am on the healing process. I'm feeling a lot better. Definitely was a rough week last week trying to keep everything moving while also dealing with being positive that I never have to feel that bad again. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. You can okay, I'm
Whoa.
just sure you can hear me.
Let's see if I can adjust my chair. There we go. Now I'm in the frame.
It's very zoomed in now.
To you?
Yeah, it was, but we're good now. How's it going?
I'm doing well. I had a very eventful weekend. I
Yeah.
got to go to a really fun transformative seminar, and it's given me a whole new outlook on life for sure.
Oh, that's right. I remember you were telling me that you were doing that. What was the format of it?
So the way that they had it set up was pretty much they are getting you to realize how many traumatic things happened in your past that have offset your whole view on life.
Hmm.
And like the guy leading the seminar, like he could read you like no other. Like I thought I was good at reading people by like listening to the way they speak, but like
Hmm.
he pulled me up there and I was like, I've got these things hidden and he ain't gonna find them. And he was just like, you did this and this is how relationships are and this is how you are at work. And I was like, mind
Hmm.
blown.
I know.
Stop
Oh my
looking into
gosh,
my
it's crazy
soul.
when when you like. Yeah. Sorry, I think it cut out for a second.
Oh, you're fine.
Um, no, it's crazy when you identify as someone who can read people really well, and then but to yourself you're like, that's just me, like to everyone else, but no one can really do that back to me. And
Yeah.
then it happens and you're like, okay, that's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
I know, and I've been there before.
And I've gone through life and had like therapists and people that I've worked with that are supposed to be good at that type of stuff, like really just they'll say, "Oh, well, once you said that, like it's obvious that you're this type of person." And I sit there, I'm like, "No." But like this weekend, everything he was like, "And you're this and this and this." It was just like checking off all the boxes, even the stuff that I've tried to hide. So it was good.
Was it was virtual though, right?
Yeah.
Man, okay, that's interesting. I wonder how they, I'm assuming it was managed pretty well.
Yeah, they had like a whole team there supporting him, and then they had like tech and everyone else as well.
Mhm.
So they definitely put a lot of work into making sure that it ran as smoothly as possible.
Awesome, that's great.
And it's also nice to be around people who actually want to better their life, whereas like being around your friends, they don't always want to, but when you put that much money on the line to do something, like you want to. So being
Right.
around more people that want to also encourages you to kind of let down your walls.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, just that's, I feel like sharing common interests with people is a huge deal, and it can be so impactful. So that's
Yeah.
really cool that you got to do that. What was the name of it? Is it something that's widely
Yeah.
available for everyone?
Yeah. So it's the MIT training that I went through, and they start you on basic, and then there's an advanced, and then there's an LP that you can take. And so it's pretty much like they, when I signed up, they had like get a discount on the second one. And
Hmm.
I've been through so many of these that I was like, I'm not signing up for two because if I get to this first one and it's absolutely horrible, I don't
Yeah.
want to have already paid for the second one because then I'll have to sit through another one. So
Right.
like I was kicking myself like on day one where I was like, I should have gotten that discount because I'm definitely signing up for the other two.
Hmm. I know it's hard to make that like initial investment when you don't really know what you're gonna get out of it, but you just got to take the risk.
Yeah. And I'm the type of person that I so they talked about like masks and like your ego. And I'm
Hmm.
definitely a person, because I do life coaching, I go into these types of things thinking I'm going to be the smartest person in the room. So I was definitely proven wrong, but
Hmm.
it was healthy and great because like I definitely grew a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a humbling experience if again, like if you identify that way, and then you get to feel what you make others feel. Like that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, I will let you introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then we can jump
Yes,
into a conversation.
for sure. Yeah. Well, my name is Max. I'm just reading the comment that just came through.
Yeah.
Very true, Josh. Or I guess I just assumed I could call him Josh, but Joshua. Uh, my name's Max. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm all over the place. I have a normal like 9 to 5 job. I work in tech, but do some fun things on the side. So I'm a fitness instructor on the side and teach at 2 different studios in Nashville. And then I'm a performer in a show here. It's Nashville's first residency show, which we can get into a little bit later if you want. But it's basically like a cowboy type burlesque show. So it's a lot of fun. I wear a lot of hats and it's exciting. But yeah, I've been in Nashville for about 5 years. It's been really fun. I moved here right out of school and have just been doing everything I can since then. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. So I feel like being someone who also wears a lot of hats, I think that that is a great little segue into a conversation, because I think that there are so many people who can fall into careers that they don't love.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we have to be the type of people that do like multiple jobs to make sure that we keep that passion one on the plate.
Hmm.
Otherwise, like it can easily fall off, and we can fall into that mindset of like work isn't supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And you just kind of fall into a mindset where you give up your dreams and any type of passion or belief that you can do stuff that you actually enjoy for work.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
how has your journey kind of gone along that?
I've been notorious for jumping around a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's in pursuit of that, right? I mean, I think that this is like a generational shift where we're pushing back on the concept that we have to do things that we don't want to do,
Yeah.
and that you have to remain in that. So I think that the definition of that journey is starting to shift a little bit, where people are more comfortable taking risks and more comfortable putting themselves in that area of discomfort if it's in pursuit of something that will ultimately make you happier.
Yeah.
So I've been open to like taking those risks, and I'm not afraid, I guess, to take that jump that maybe is the illogical choice in the moment. I've always been like a super calculated person, but at
Yeah.
the same time, will I like to be spontaneous in the same way. So, yes, I completely resonate with that. I think it's something that a lot of people face, especially in our generation. This idea that you like can't love what you do for work, and there are days where I don't love doing the things that I'm doing every single day and every moment, and that's normal. But I think that I get the question a lot of like, well, how do you do it all? Why do you have 4 jobs? How is that possible? And I think it's just that the things that I do outside of my day job, I love so much, and there's so much passion behind them that I would feel sad if I like let go of them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's like this concept of finding those passion projects and making time for them. And also my mom, who's like a huge part of my life. We're very close. She's always the one that's like, you're young. Like if you can do it, I'll do it. Like like do it now before it's gonna be too much. So I'm like, all right. So
Yeah. I think that so many people like, because when you say you've got 4 jobs, like people are just like, well, where's the time for fun? And
right.
it's like you have to realize that finding the fun in the career in itself, like that's part of it. Like I think that so many people talk about work that they're like, you spend so much time at work and where's all the fun? And I was like, well, you've got to bring the fun into that because you're going to be working. And if you're not enjoying it, like when you look at the hours spent per year at work, like that's a lot of life not to be
Yeah.
enjoying. So, and I mean, I was doing coaching on the side of my like leadership coaching job that was for a corporate company. And when that corporate job disappeared for me, like my passion that I was doing on the side became my full-time job because I did put enough love and effort into that on the side, even though there were days when I was exhausted and didn't think that it would be worth it.
Right.
It was worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too. Like it's so easy to look back on where you're at and the things that you've put time into and like be like, oh, I'm so grateful that I did that. But in the moment, it can be really hard to realize what it's worth, when like what that outcome will be. And
Yeah.
like I literally, so I got back home from teaching a class just now, and like one of the messages that I was trying to convey in class, and it's similar to a Soul Cycle class if you've been to it before. So there's like usually that strong like motivational message to it. And I was just saying like, don't worry about the outcome, worry about the effort that you put in, because it sometimes you can't control the outcome, and it's just like reminding yourself that I deserve the effort, I deserve the chance to put in the effort. Um, yeah, I resonate that with that hugely.
Yeah. And I think that we have to realize that because a lot of clients that I work with, when they talk about like jumping from job to job, they're like, well, companies don't like to look at people who do that. And I'm like, so what you're saying is companies love to look at resumes and go, this person chose to be miserable for 3 years instead of 2 weeks, and they chose to stay at this job even though they hated it. And I was like, that energy that that's creating at that job that you absolutely hate is being thrown out into the universe, and you're going to bring it to your interview, into your next job. Like if you were
Yeah.
that miserable and you didn't choose to leave because you knew it was going to be good for you, you're going to
Right.
come into that new interview with an attitude that reflects that 3 year period of complete like exhaustion or complete resentment of the company you work for. And I'm like, you need to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're protecting your energy more than anything else because no one else is going to do it. Like corporate America definitely won't do it. You have to make sure that you choose to protect energy because whether you see it or not, everyone around you is picking up on the vibes that you're sending out. And if you're not doing things on a regular basis that like make you excited, like it shows and it will impact the relationships you have, and you will push out people that are looking for high energy, good, positive people. Not saying that you'll have a perfect life, but the people that you attract like a magnet will reflect the energy you're putting out. And if you're in a job for 3 years that you hate, more likely the people that have come and attached themselves to you like that type of energy because either they're in that mindset or
Mm-hmm.
they just need someone else to agree that life's not fair and that the world sucks, and they will find you.
Yeah. No, I'm literally like everything you're saying. I'm like, yes, like you get it. No, it's just, I mean, it's kind of like it's a time and place thing, It's like it's very easy to stereotype and to group things into like a commonality and be like, yes, there are the people that stay in something for too long and they're miserable and that reflects, and then it starts to pour into other areas of your life. But then there's also a good case and argument for committing to something and like being the change that you want to see. Because I think that's like to your point, like if you stay at a job for 2 weeks versus 3 years, I think what it comes down to is like, did you make every effort you could to change or to make change and again like be the change that you want to see, or was it just like oh, this is a terrible situation, poor me, poor this, poor me, so it's like if you want something in life, then I mean, it sounds so simple for me to say this, but it's like go get it. Like
Yeah.
we are our own biggest roadblocks in life. And I think that's a huge thing that I try to get past people whenever I have intimate conversations with friends and family and anyone who's unhappy with a situation. It's just like, okay, well, what are we doing about it? You know? And I like
Yeah.
to use the word because it's like I want to support you in that. I want to be there for you through that, and I want to do what I can to even if it's just like be an inspiration to you. You know, I think it's just getting people out of that mindset that what that their potential is scary of sorts. You know, like people are very afraid of their own potential. You kind of just
Yeah.
have to let go of that fear and take the jump and realize that you probably will fail along the way and you'll learn from it and then you'll do it again, and that's life. And it's just a, I don't know, it's a big cycle.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like we as a society and world have taught ourselves that being victims, like, I mean, being a victim, we get sympathy from people. But
Yeah.
like in situations where if your job is something like if something is happening at your job that you don't like, but you are in the field and in a space that you want to thrive in, playing victim
Mm-hmm.
won't get you the results. But if you choose to be a victor in that moment, and if you are putting all the effort in to create the change you want to see instead of just sitting there claiming to be a victim and just assuming that it's going to change because you've cried about it, like if you're playing victim in that situation, then you can't just be like, well, I left because of this. But if
Yeah.
you put in all the effort and work and it is still the powers of being is just not shifting, then maybe you're not in the right spot. Maybe there's another company with that exact same
Mm-hmm.
job description that will thrive off of the energy that you're able to provide for it. But
Yeah.
like it's important, and this is something that they taught in this weekend's seminar, was that pain is inevitable, like it will happen, but suffering is your choice.
Yeah.
So if you choose to suffer after the pain, that's a mindset that you've chosen. And like thankfully, like this week between my seminar and the next one, like Tony
Mm-hmm.
Robbins is like putting out a free seminar that I was watching today,
Yeah.
and he was just talking and just like throwing out all these just like golden nuggets, and I was just like absorbing everything. I was just like, yes, yes, you're right, keep doing it. But
I
it's
know.
crazy like how people's mindsets can hear that same information, and if they want to choose to be a victim, they're like, it's not that easy, you
Yeah.
can't do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to the basis of the program that you went through, right? I mean, it's like the way that we go about that decision making process and that mindset shift is a lot to do with how we were raised, who, you know, what effects people and events had on us up until this point. So, you know, if you're very fortunate to have a very strong support system and come from, let's say, an upbringing where you were accepted and everything about you was kind of like lifted up and guided into a successful light or path or whatever, that doesn't mean that everything is going to be easy for you, but at least you felt supported and you felt like the effort was worth it or that you deserve to try. And then there's the opposite of that where people come from a very off, like, I mean, terrible environment, or like that would be the extreme, but like not everyone has that innate kind of my or ability to just be like, oh well, it's just me, you know, like I just need to change my mindset, or I just need to do this, I just need to do that. Like there's so many blockers to it. And so that's where I sympathize and empathize with people that can't necessarily get there right away, because sometimes people don't have the support system to even believe in themselves to where they could even make that choice. So,
Yeah, it's interesting because like they were talking about like events in life, like events themselves are neutral. It's not until we as human beings put meaning on it
yeah.
that it goes one way or the other, and you have the right to put whatever meaning you want onto any event in your life. And if you do live in a world where maybe you had a really good mentor, maybe your parents kind of had their head screwed on in the right direction for you to thrive as a child, but there are some people
Mm-hmm.
who grow up hearing that the world is stacked against you, and like no matter how hard you work, you will never be as successful as this group of people. And when
Mm-hmm.
that's your reality, and because as a kid you hear that and just accept it as facts because we assume our parents are all knowing beings, Uh,
Mhm.
but that's important as an adult to go back and reflect on and go, okay, so my parents said money is hard to come by. Is that true?
Mhm.
Because if you accept it, then money will always be hard to come by
Yeah.
because that's your belief. And it's so interesting because you can have two people living a same event or experience with a different mindset, and they're going to get completely different outcomes because of the mindset that they've chosen to add to that like event in their life.
1,000%. Yeah. Well, a good friend of mine that I used to work with actually went into life coaching also, and I was supporting her in her kind of pursuit of that, and did a session with her. And the first thing we did was limiting beliefs. Let's try to figure out what your limiting beliefs are. And then she kind of took me down a path of why that was, and like where they come from, how to navigate them. So that's a really, really cool topic and conversation to have with people that are feeling that way, because again, like there are those that have had an upbringing that gets them to the point where they're very comfortable and open to have that conversation, and there are those that don't even realize that they have limiting beliefs. It's like
Yeah.
they don't even know that that's an issue, and then revealing that to them is so eye-opening, because it's like, oh, I don't have to think this way. Okay, like how do I change that?
Yeah. And I think that the really cool thing to realize is that there are things that we accept in as reality, and there are some things where it's so negative that it's really easy for people to be like, that's a limiting belief there. But there are also like masks that we will adapt into ourselves that are good things that people will praise us for that still negatively impact our outcomes in life.
Oh yeah.
Because like if you're the type of person that can be really funny, that doesn't seem like a bad thing. But if you're choosing to not be your authentic self and you're hiding who you are behind a funny, like comedian mask, then you are literally being like, people are like, oh my God, he's so funny. This is great. And you're getting applause for it, but you're
Mhm.
getting applause for hiding yourself. And I mean,
Yeah.
the LGBT community deals with that because when you're in the closet, you will do whatever it takes to hide that part of yourself, and you get applause for it, and people love you
Yeah.
for it. So then when it comes to the coming out process, like having to come out behind the mask that has received so much praise, that's so hard when you hear what could happen if you showed your vulnerable self to the world. And like it's the things that we get praised for that are the hardest to overcome because you don't want to lose that. We all want to be connected, and if we're afraid of disconnect, we'll keep that mask on way longer than we need to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole concept of self-deprecating humor too, you know? And I also like I sit here and say a lot of these things, and like a lot of it are things that I have done or like experienced still. Like these are I definitely don't claim to be an expert at any of these things. I think a lot of the reason why my mindset is what it is because I've dealt with those things. And like that type of validation for unhealthy habits is I can already like think of something that I that I've done in the past where I'm like, yeah, I had to really like break that down and let go of this belief. But yeah, like even as simple as making fun of yourself, like if someone compliments you, that was one concept I remember. I can't remember who I was speaking to, but it's so easy to, if you say, like, let's say you compliment your best friend and then they're like, oh no, like I'm not that or whatever. It's so easy for you to give that compliment and for you to praise that person, but then if they were to do it back to you, it's like why is it so hard to accept that? Because I feel like that's a common concept with people, is that they can't accept a compliment, or they can't just say thank you, and you have to kind of disagree with it, or else you seem like you're conceited, or you're you know like selfish in a way or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
It's
think.
it's like your
Go ahead.
ego rejects their compliment because
Yeah.
like it wants to stay in a comfort area where like your belief is that you're not attractive. So when someone states something that is so obviously against your belief system, like you have to reject it because if you
Mhm.
accept it, that means you have to now change your view of the world. So like it's interesting because a lot of people don't realize that's like what life coaches and therapists and people who work with people to better themselves are trained to pick up on
Mm-hmm.
is we ask questions to specifically see the response that comes from it. And when we point it out to people, they're just like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, yes, yes, yes. It's it might not be the exact issue, but there I hit a chord of this insecurity that you are not willing to accept, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're hiding it behind humor or hiding it behind your brain. There's something hidden here that you're not accepting, and that's why you're kind of shifting this way instead of moving this way in towards your goals that you want to achieve in life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's also it's human nature to want to be comfortable, right? Like that's a survival method is that we don't want to be just uncomfortable, and so if you're forced to be put into that situation, then you're immediately going to reject it, and that's just human nature too. But I think if you can train your brain to like put yourself into those situations and realize that there can be good that comes from it and that you can learn something from it that will ultimately make you stronger, and then
Yeah,
to even get a step further, it's not just you that that affects, but it's all of the people around you. Because if you're more confident in yourself, imagine how good you could show up for the people that you love. You know,
yeah,
it's. I think that's people forget that yes, like the concept of showing up for your friends, the people that you love, like how do you do that back to yourself though? And are you doing it to yourself? Because you might claim that you're doing all these things for others, but if you're not showing up for you, then then
you're only showing up half full for your friends
yeah,
anyway.
exactly.
And
Like imagine what you could do.
yeah, it's interesting because like you look at like a kindergarten class versus adults, and like you see kindergartners, like people who are younger and have had less life trauma are so much more willing to believe in a dream or that they can be anything they want to be. But
Yeah.
then as trauma starts to happen in your life, you start to create a comfort zone that keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it shrinks so small that then you have to make a drastic change to your belief system because your life beliefs have put you in such a small box that you can't achieve anything.
Yeah.
And it's important to realize that you like the things that shrink it kind of happen naturally to us. Sometimes we will try something new and it will not end the way we wanted, and that will shrink us. But it's important to keep trying new things because when you try new things and it works, that creates the mindset of, I can do something that's not comfortable and it work out in the end. And that
Mm-hmm.
kind of creates that space. And it only has to happen once to like show your ego that it's like, yeah, we got this. And once you've created that
Yeah.
space for that, then your ego is like, you know what, let's try something else new. But if you allow it to keep shrinking, it will do it until you have no more room to stay in that space.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think it's very unique also that whole kind of just like ecosystem of thought because with social media, it's so easy to compare yourself to everyone. And the first thought that you have is like especially now, I feel like with our generation, you might think to do something that's new for you, but you know that someone else has done it. And so you're always going to think in the back of my head, well, someone else has done it and they'll probably do it better. Or they probably like they've done this already, so why should I even try? It's that concept. Like I was having a conversation with one of my friends about this recently, where it was just like, I really want to do this. For example, just to like kind of put it out there in context, it was like I really want to start this business. I want to go into this field, right? But I don't feel like an expert at it. I don't feel like this. I don't feel like that. And it's like, well, you know, every person that you look up to, they started at some point too. Like they started at a place where they knew nothing, and they built their way up to it. So it's like, I feel like the idea of comparison and with everyone's successes and highlight reels being shoved in our faces day to day, it's so hard for people to just take that step to start.
Yeah. I mean, I always ask people, I'm like, how perfect does your social media portray you as a whole person? And I'm like, that's exactly how everyone else is as well. So we're not going to sit there and compare ourselves there. And when it comes
Mm,
to doing something but thinking someone else can do it better, you know what? They can't do it the same way you're going to do it. Your journey has brought so many tools along the way that those tools and that combination of tools only belongs to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to like saying that you do like soul cycle type things, everything that you did before you got there equips you with something different than a coworker that's doing the same thing in the next room or the next hour when the next group of people come.
Yeah.
And it's all about the mindset of believing that what you brought to the table was something that no one else could do. And it doesn't matter if someone else brought something else, because there are people out there that need the tools that you have and the knowledge that you've obtained.
Yes.
And the person next door, they might be able to do something similar to what you're doing, but it's not going to be the same. And they might, a group of people might not benefit from hearing that person speak. Whereas when they hear you, it's a completely different story.
Absolutely. And it's also this concept of like there's enough room for everyone at the top was like a really powerful concept that was taught to me when I was going through my instructor training. It's like I think that people naturally place themselves in competition with others in this realm of possibility when it comes to taking risks and doing things that others have already done. It's this idea that you're in competition with others, and it's like, to your point, you have such a unique set of experiences of, you know, whatever your past is, everything that accumulates into what that effort would be, that the next person wouldn't be able to provide. And like, yes, it might be the same goal that you're trying to reach, but it will be in such a different way that it would be a shame if you didn't try. And then also, to your point of connecting with others, it's like, you know, think about your best friend. Like they became your best friend because of the collection of experiences that they had leading up to the point of you meeting, you know. And that could have been anyone. Like it's as simple as that. And I think it all ties back to like the things that we were talking about when we first started this live, is like taking that chance and just and realizing that you just have to get started.
Yeah. It was interesting because uh, one of my friends that I made in the seminar this weekend, her name is Jocelyn, and we were talking about how we became so vulnerable with each other as a group of people that we somehow are more open with each other as new friends that have only known each other since Friday than we do with our friends that we've known for years.
Really?
And we were like, we were willing to flip our lot, like our innards out for them to see all of our insecurities, all of our struggles.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how important it is to get to know people from the inside out instead of the opposite way.
Yeah.
Because if you get to know people by the things that are surrounding them versus getting to know who they are on the inside, you make so many preconceived judgments based upon, oh, look at the clothes they're wearing, look at the siblings they have, look at the way they walk, look at the environment they surround themselves. You automatically create so much of a defined definition of who that person is before you've gotten to know them at all. It's like, this person looked like an ex, this person looks too manly, this
Yep.
person looks too feminine.
Uh-huh.
And we don't know anything about this person. We've just attached all this meaning based upon a quick visual glance. And that's what social media does.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but like, that's, I couldn't figure out why I loved my positive talk so much, but it was because I don't really know most people that I pull onto these. I
Hmm.
just sense this positive energy and what they put out into the world. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
And I feel so connected to people through positive talks, whereas some of my friends that have been in my life forever, I could never have some of these conversations with.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I that's such a powerful concept that you talk about, like, because we do make these preconceived notions of people, and there's so much more than just the surface level of what you get to see from that, right? Like and I don't know, I think back to kind of like the concept of people thinking like, oh, like let's say you have two friends, right? And then you, like, an outsider is like, oh, I wouldn't really see that for them. And it's like, okay, well, why? Like, where are you getting that from? You know, because we always make these judgments on people because you only see a fraction of what that person is. And that's what I hate about, I mean, like obviously there's a lot to hate about the current situation of the world that with COVID and everything, but like that's what's so sad about it too, is that it's just really pulled people away from being able to connect in real life.
Yeah.
And and that is so important. I don't, it's just, I think that's another thing too, as an extrovert. So like I'm very extroverted. I've toyed with the idea that maybe I'm an extroverted introvert because I do like to recharge and be alone and whatnot. But like, if you're that kind of person that isn't afraid to get in front of a group and like, and make a friend and talk to strangers, like that can be very lonely. You know, one of the things that I love to do with my classes, anyone that's taken my class, they'll know the first thing I do before we start is I always tell people to turn to the person next to them and introduce themselves, because it's like I want them to realize that it's a community, and whether you've
Yeah.
come to the once and or whether you come there every single day, like the fact that you are in that room together with someone that maybe you don't even know for 45 minutes and you're riding on a bike in a dark room, but like that can connect you. And the friendships that I've seen spawn from people just coming to this studio and taking classes, even my own friendships, are just things that that's the beauty of life, really. I mean, like that, the connection piece and being able to facilitate that is honestly will always be one of the best accomplishments in my life, really.
Yeah. And I think that we have gotten to a point with the way we connect with people that we almost have shifted to a social online like engagement to people. And I think that we have untrained our minds how to connect with people face to face.
Yeah.
And it almost takes someone standing at the front of the room saying, say hello to the person beside you. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times I've led seminars and people don't talk to each other. And then they message each other online and they're like, hey, you were in the same seminar with me. Because for them, they don't even know how to start a conversation with someone sitting right beside them. Whereas it's so easy to go online because we've almost trained our brain to be like, you know what, if they don't respond, maybe they just didn't see it.
Yeah.
Whereas the idea of someone not responding to you right beside you, you would have to accept that this person did not want to talk to you. But it's
Right.
like, what's the likelihood of that actually happening? Most people would probably engage, but we create such a scary like idea that, oh gosh, I can't do this.
Oh, yep.
And it's important for people to realize that's a mindset that you've attached to that idea, and you just have to push
Yeah.
yourself past that comfort and do it anyway.
Oh yeah. I'm the king of creating fantasies in my head of like that, like and I think I get this from my mom. I always like joke with her, because she's such a worry wart. Like she will think of the absolute worst case scenario of everything, just so that way she's prepared if anything happens. And I think I kind of like have picked that up from her growing up. And so anytime I'm like assessing a situation, I'm always thinking to myself like for example, if I have to say no to someone, because I very much hate saying no, I will go out of my way and like push myself beyond my limits just to make sure that like I'm pleasing people. That's an unhealthy habit that I've recognized that I have.
Yeah.
But it's something where I'm like, well, if I don't do this one thing, then they're gonna hate me, or they're gonna like they're never gonna speak to me again, or they won't be my friend. And it's like all these it's just that same concept of like creating this idea in your head before you've even really tried. And it's like, well, okay, let's back up for a second. Did they say that? Did they actually like tell you that they're upset with you, or you know, such and such? And that, I feel like that kind of speaks to what you were just saying.
Yeah. And I mean, we live in a world where there are so many traumatized people, but like at the end of the day, we have to do what's best for us. And if you can't make an event, like it doesn't matter if you agree to it on Monday. If you can't make it happen today, then you're going to have to say, hey, I know that I made like a commitment to you as a person. And that's why like ghosting is such a huge thing, because
Mm,
it's so much harder for people to just say, hey, I can't, because we've set the standard to be like, you're a bad person if you
right.
cancel. But in all reality, like you're not a bad person. You're just a person that at this time cannot, with like, you can't do that commitment for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And we've just adapted so many beliefs that, you know what, you're a bad person if you don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about shifting. Like for me, like your mindset, I think that I had a lot of that as well when it came to believing people wouldn't like me. So I became the world's biggest people pleaser. And it wasn't until like I started giving other people grace, whether they were standing me up for a good reason or not. I always gave it a positive reason because I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I've got to believe that people for I honestly do believe that most people do not operate out of wanting to hurt anyone. A
Right.
lot of times it probably has something to do with their internal belief system in themselves
Mm-hmm.
that like causes them to end up doing something that hurts someone else, but they're not intentionally doing it. So I've just assumed across the board that no one ever operates out of wanting to hurt me as a person. And in that mindset, that shift gave me the space to say, you know what, I'm not doing this to be rude. I'm doing it because, I mean, even if it is as simple as I'm exhausted, I didn't sleep last
Mm-hmm.
night, I need to put space here for me to rest. That's
Right.
okay. It's not bad.
Yeah. And it's also like, I think part of that too is realizing that if it really is that bad, and if it really is like, if it really comes down to someone completely like hating you or like, you know, not wanting to be your friend because of something like that, then like let them go. You know, like respectfully, then they probably don't belong in your life anyway, you know. It's like it's this idea that if you lose something like that, that's just devastating, but at the end of the day, shift your mindset a little bit and realize that maybe it wasn't good for you in the first place. And
Yeah.
to your point, like I think that's one of the things too, with just us in general and everyone. I feel like I could kind of aggregate this into a pretty common belief, but like the idea that you have to give a reason, you know, it's like if I don't want to do something, I just don't want to. And why are we so afraid to say that? And again, like this is something that I deal with too. It's not something that I say that I like have the answers for, and I've like I'm an expert at this. It's like I I face this a lot, but it's like we don't always have to have a reason. Or it's also the concept of like just because I don't have something going on doesn't mean I'm free, you know? And that's something that I struggle with a lot too, with having so many commitments and like trying to be everywhere at all times. It's like sometimes I just need to sit down and not do something, and that's okay. And I don't have to explain it to people. I should just be able to say that.
Yeah.
But it's a hard
It's
hard reality to,
it's definitely interesting to like, because you were talking about kind of like letting someone go.
yeah.
And when I think of like relationships, I used to think that letting someone go meant I was a bad person because I wasn't being there for someone
Yeah.
long term. And I was just like, I'm a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
Or if someone else chose to walk out of my life, I instantly, instead of just assuming that it just wasn't meant to be at that time, I started destroying myself as a person, thinking that there's something wrong with me that caused people to walk out of my life. When my last relationship ended, and my mindset was just like, he's a great person, I'm a great person, we couldn't make it work. I'm walking forward in life, still growing as a person every day,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to allow a person walking out of my life make me question everything about myself. And
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? We gave it a fighting chance. We don't have to end on bad terms. We can walk in a different direction. And you know,
Right.
that person can still be a connection later on in life. Right now, it's just not happening. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah. And I think that that stems from a place of self-acceptance too, you know, like you are in a place where you can come to that conclusion because
Yeah.
you know yourself well enough and you love yourself for who you are and what you are and what you become through these experiences, that you are confident that no matter what there you will progress and you will keep going and you will find another person if that's what you want, you know. I think for a lot of people they don't feel that sense of self-love. And
Hmm.
that's why it's so hard to let go of something that they've identified themselves
Yeah.
with for, you
That
know.
that just means that they've attached their self-worth to something external instead of internal.
Right.
Because like going to a seminar, reading self-help books, going to therapy, like all of that is so important for people, like because you are putting into you. You are saying, I am important, and where I am at in life is important for my growth.
Hmm.
Because if you're not doing that, because my friend Garland and I were on the phone earlier where we were talking about like there are people who are just bad leaders, and then there are people who are amazing leaders. The amazing leaders are amazing because they have chosen a leadership position because they want to make everyone around them better.
Yeah.
Whereas bad leaders are people who chose to be a leader because their self worth depends on them being in a position of power. Otherwise, they are not good. They are not worthy. And
Hmm.
it's so important to see where you attach your self worth, because if it's on anything external, you're going to do things to manipulate those things to stay, because
Yeah.
if they leave, your self worth goes with it. But if
Mm.
you've chosen internal self worth and self love, then when things walk out, your worth doesn't. And you're like, you know what? That's just not meant to be here right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I echo that 1,000%. I think that's honestly part of the reason, like, that it's a constant journey too, right? You know, it's not like you just like reach this point and you're like, cool, I love myself, everything's good to go from here on out. Like it's a constant change, and you're always evolving, you're always learning to love different parts of yourself as you evolve and as you change. And I think your experiences reflect that, and the people that you surround yourself with reflect that. And it's just a constant change, and being open to that change too, and taking the risk on yourself, knowing that, again, like going back to what we were talking about before, it's scary. It's scary. Change is scary, but you have to realize, like, yes, things won't go right. They're not always going to go right, and that's okay. Um,
Yeah.
and you just have to trust that you, again, at the end of it, like, you're worth the effort, not and the outcome, what's meant to be will be, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, the life that is happening around you is based upon your journey and the choices you have made in life. And it's always interesting to try to enlighten someone to that, because you can say, my relationship was destroyed because of actions I took as a person. Yes,
Yeah.
the other person's actions also contributed to that, but you
Mhm.
also have to take ownership to that as well, because me learning that doesn't necessarily mean that my friends are ready to learn that lesson in life, because for them to
Yeah.
understand that, that would mean that they have to also accept that their life where they're currently at is their fault. Like everything that's happening to you. So if the life around you isn't reflecting what you want to see, you have to make changes. And to do that, you have to accept that you've done something that brought the life that you are currently in. And if you can accept that reality, then you can start to make changes, because we all have power to make changes.
Yeah.
And if you are super unhappy, you have to be strong enough to be like, I'm going to make some changes. And you know
Hmm.
what? Sometimes those changes aren't going to bring positive results. That's when you're like, you know what? That one didn't work. Let's try something else.
Yeah.
And then see how that impacts the things.
Right.
But the life that you see around you is 100% brought to you by you. And
Brought
if
to
you
you by.
can't accept that, like if you can't say, this is my life and this is what I brought, then you can't change anything until you accept that.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be. Yeah. You have to be comfortable enough to make those choices and stand in them also. Like, you have to know that ultimately, like, it does kind of come down to you, right? Like, you can look at your surroundings, and you can blame things, or you can choose to change them.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Really just kind of comes down to that choice of, like, what do you want for yourself, and what are you going to do about it. Yeah, I feel like I don't know. There's a lot of things going through my head now that you're now that I'm like, yeah, because I feel like I've been through a lot of change over the last 5 years, just from like college me to me 5 years out of school. And it's really amazing to look back on it and be like, wow, you are a completely different person now. But like, why is that? And it's because of all of these things that have happened up until this point that have made me who I am now. And I'm sure you can say the same. Like if you were to
Oh
think
yeah.
back you 5 years ago versus you now, it's a very impactful reflection. And then also when you think ahead, I think this is another powerful concept is that I feel like I find myself sometimes worried about what might be in the future and like if I'm on the right path, am I making the right choices? Like all of these things in your head of like you have to make the right choice every single time you have to make a decision. But then like looking back and thinking, okay, well, the things that I used to want, I now have. And so like let's be proud of that. Let's be grateful for that. And then like, keep moving forward. It's again, always changing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like I keep getting hit with this one so many different times when it comes to like what you focus on is what you're going to bring into your life. Like listening to the knowing that the universe doesn't know what negative is a very interesting thing because a lot of times we focus on what we don't want and
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, well, I know what I don't want." Well, don't focus on that because it's like telling people don't think of a pink elephant. Like your brain automatically it can't not think of a pink elephant when someone says that. Your brain
Right.
instantly it's not like, "Ooh, lion." It thinks of a
Mm.
pink elephant. And in today's seminar with Tony Robbins, he was like, "Okay, I want you to look around your space that you're currently in and I want you to find as many things that you can see that are brown. Just
Mm.
take a look, count as many things as you can think, and close your eyes." He's like, "Okay, now tell me how many things in your room were red." And you can't really, like, your brain starts to go, well, I know there's a book on the shelf over there that's red because I know I bought that, but your
Yeah.
brain can't think about anything that's red because you were so focused on counting all the things that were brown. And then you will start to try to manipulate and go, well, okay, one of those shirts was kind of like brownish red, but and your brain will try to manipulate it, but it really is what you choose to focus on. So if you focus on the negatives, that's all you're going to see. And
Hmm.
your brain can't differentiate anything. It's like, oh, you don't want a flat tire? Well, here's that flat tire. It's everything that you don't want. Oh, you don't want to break up? Well, did you see how many texts this person sent that day and none of them were to you? Your brain is just like finding anything that can prove that this person is cheating and not going to be with you forever.
Yeah.
But if you chose
Hmm.
to see the
Have you
good,
ever?
go for it.
Sorry. No, no, no. You're good. I think it like it cut out.
Yeah,
What
go
were you?
for it.
What were you saying?
Go for it.
Oh no, I was just saying like to your point. I mean, have you ever been like, oh, have you ever been thinking about getting a new car and you like decide on one and then that's the only car you see when you're on the road and it's
Yeah.
like it's concept. It's just like what you focus on is your reality. And almost to that point too, going back to the like limiting beliefs conversation, it's like again, what you focus on becomes your reality. And if you focus on something that is like I can't do this because insert irrational fear like like then that will be and until you are able to be the one that makes the decision to change that then it will continue to be so.
Yeah. And I mean, there have been so many different people that are just like, you're out of my league. I can't afford that. I'm not worth this.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't realize how right they are. They're 100% correct because if that is your belief, that is your reality. And that is what you are accepting. And there
Yeah.
are people out there that are like, I am deserving of all the wealth in the world. I am deserving of a relationship that this person is fully committed to me and loves only me in that way. And when you accept that, when you believe you are actually worth that, those types of things manifest themselves into your life just because you see that as a possibility. But if you don't see
Mm-hmm.
it as a possibility, it can walk right by you and you would never
Oh yeah.
know. And I
Mhm.
like there when I went through my training to be a coach, like I needed to know it down to a science. I couldn't accept just think positive and positive things happen. But after I read it down to like how much your brain processes, like there are so many things happening around you every second of your life, but your brain can only process so many things per second. So it accepts realities that you've trained it to see because it can't it can't analyze everything. So it just accepts certain things. So if you are dead set on negative,
Mm-hmm.
it is so focused on finding those things for you because it's like I want to find more of this because this is what they want, this is what they're telling me to find,
Yep.
and it will throw out all your possibilities because it thinks all you want is to find your limits, and it will do that because you trained it. It's not snap your finger and possibilities come. It's you every day you have to train yourself, and that's why they tell you to like journal about the future you want instead of your current negative situations. That's why
Yeah.
they tell you to say things to yourself in the mirror, even though they feel extremely false. It's about resetting that mindset so that you do walk through your day and actually see a possibility that's always been there, but your
Right.
mindset would never allow it to present itself to you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, manifestation is a huge, huge, huge topic, I feel like as of late for a lot of people. And just especially speaking it in the present tense is another huge one that I try to get across to people. Like if you are going to start manifesting things that you want for yourself, it's not, I mean, it's still positive to say I will this, I will that, but if you can really get yourself in the mindset of like I am, I have, and like you are basically putting yourself as your present self in that future state, and then it helps your brain just kind of realize like you like I have this and it's and I am and I'm going to get there. To your point, your brain will then start to focus on ways that you can begin making that happen,
Yeah.
and patience along that process, knowing that it won't just be like an overnight thing usually, depending on what you're trying to manifest, but
Yeah.
it will it will happen if you set your sights on it.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to like job interviews or when it comes to going on a first date, if you already believe that you are deserving of that,
Mhm.
you're going to go into that job interview with confidence versus self doubt. And if you go into the job interview and think, there's no way I'm going to get this, every answer you give is going to come from a place of undeserving of this position. But if you
Mhm.
go into it and you're like, you know what, like I'm perfect for this like position, like, and you sit in there and they start asking you questions and you have that belief that you are perfect for that position, your answers will come from such a place of confidence. It's just like people who audition for roles. Like if you allow
Mhm.
yourself to get in your head and make that belief of I don't deserve it, you're going to go into that so nervous because you believe you don't deserve it. But if you walk
Yep.
into there and you're like, you know what? Like I'm perfect for this. Like this role
Yep.
was made for me. You'd be
Yeah.
stupid not to cast me for this role.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
confidence level, people like feed off of that vibration that you're going to give, and you have to like be aware of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, two thoughts came up when you were saying that. One is that, you know, you have this belief that you deserve the thing that you're going for. And then if it doesn't work out, like you still have this positive mindset in your head of like, okay, well, then it wasn't right for me. It wasn't me. It wasn't like anything that I had an issue with. It's that maybe it's just not a good fit or whatever the response might be, but at least you're still in the mindset of like it has nothing to do with my worth or that I don't deserve this. It's just it wasn't the right fit. Whereas if you go in saying I'm never going to do this, I don't deserve it, then when you don't get it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense because it's my fault. It's like this is on me. Whereas that confidence level is another part. And my second thought to that is just that, like, a lot of things that you do in life, especially being a performer, like half the battle is confidence. Even if you're doing it wrong, like half the battle is confidence. If you can, like, so like, for example, I'm not a trained dancer, but in this show, I mean, I was a cheerleader in college, so I have like some sort of like relative
Some
background
rhythm.
in picking up. But still, like, we have a lot of professional dancers in this group, and so I was definitely insecure in the beginning, finding myself as like, I definitely am not the most like um talented in this way. But again, confidence is half the battle. If I can just be like, you know what, no, I look great, like, and then on top of that, like, having fun with it too. If you get down to the point of like, I genuinely love this, then that translates. And I think that that's what's huge, especially in like performance type roles. If you truly love what you're doing and you're having a good time, then that translates to the audience, and they receive that vibration and energy that you love it, and then they will also feel that same way.
Yeah.
um,
And I
and that's
mean,
to that type
being
of like that applies elsewhere.
yeah, being someone who has been in like performances on stage where it's like live and you only get that one shot, like it's funny how many times you can look back at that performance and see so many flaws that, oh, I misstepped there. Oh, I missed that move. Oh, I didn't do this. The audience does not know. Like, they do not see that. They see someone up there on stage doing something that more likely they will not do in their lifetime.
Yep.
And it's important for you to realize that if you allow that misstep to destroy your confidence for the rest of the show, that's when your like mistakes will start to show up, because the energy you're giving out and your facial expression and body language will probably read that. You have
Mm-hmm.
to keep going through it, and you're like, you know what, one mess up, let's keep going, we got this, show must go on. And it's an important mindset to carry through, and that's the way any job, like maybe first time you're a doctor and your first surgery, you got to do your first one eventually. And
Yeah.
I mean, you have to go through it with, you know what? I have studied, I have watched, I have assisted, I have done this a million times in my head. I've got this. But
Mm-hmm.
if you go into it and like psych yourself out, you will fail and you will
Mm-hmm.
mess up.
Yeah. And then I think too, like, there's that added layer of like, not necessarily seeking out failure, but realizing that it will happen at some point and being okay with that. Like, I think that's another thing too, is like, have the energy and the mindset that you are confident in your abilities, that you have prepared yourself for the situation well enough. Hopefully you have, obviously, like, given the scenario. Sometimes that's not always the case, but still, hopefully you're in that position where you can say like, no, I just need to do this, and like, you have to get in your head and make that choice to just begin or start or do that thing for the first time or whatever it is. But like, in the back of your head, knowing that, like, if failure is the worst, if failure is the worst case scenario, then honestly that's good, because you, like, through failure is where you learn and where you get better and where you get stronger, and you keep going. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you don't become an expert overnight at pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, even with like these positive talks, I think that one thing that really just like keeps me going is the adrenaline I get about doing this and knowing that it could go whatever direction. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't set up a direction too much because I want it to do that, just because I enjoy seeing where it goes. But it could go in a direction that I don't want. I don't want it to. But like, I just love the process of just allowing things to happen. And it is stretching my belief system every single time, because I've reached out to people who are like huge celebrities, and I've got self-limiting beliefs. I'm technically a nobody in this realm of like Hollywood. And when I get a response back and they actually watch my videos and they're like, you know what? Here, contact my agent, talk to them, and we'll see if we can set something up. Like, my heart's sitting there like, oh, wow. And then that makes my belief go, maybe I'm not, like, maybe this is something that's like creating like this good like space in the world that other people see and respect. And it
Mm,
just keeps fueling the flames of like, you know what, let's keep going. Let's see how far I can go with this and see how many people I can connect with, because
yeah.
it's a fun game for me. It's stepping out of my comfort zone every single time, but it's fun. Like it's
Uh,
gotten to the point where I enjoy that feeling.
yeah. Well, and I think that's what translates too, is that you love doing this and that you're making a positive impact on people. And that's what translates, and that's what probably leads to the yeses that you have received in getting this, you know? I mean, like
Yeah.
you reached out to me and I was just like to the same point as you. Like I see your page and I'm like, why does he want to talk to me of all people? You know, like it's kind of the same thing, but I am very tied to that concept of sharing positivity and being a light for people. And so that's what translates, and that's what stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, of course I would love the opportunity to do that. So to your point, it's and to what we were talking about, it's like if you love it, you know, like not who cares, but like keep doing it for you, and people will catch on.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time that are like smaller on social platforms that are like, oh, well, I'm not big like you. And I'm like, I was small. Like, I'm growing just because I wanted to see positivity on the internet. And apparently, so do other people.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've got to start. And what you say with 0 followers still has just as much meaning with 1 million.
Hmm.
Like you've got to start somewhere. Like there is not a celebrity on this planet that didn't start somewhere and has grown, because you can be a child of a celebrity and still choose to go a completely different route. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's all about your intentions of what direction you want to take your life.
Hmm. Yeah, and it comes back to the idea that like you're only gonna see other people's greatest successes. I
Yeah.
mean, usually, I think lately some people have been a little bit more open about sharing their failures and being more honest on social media. But for the most part, you're only ever going to catch the best moments or the best things that someone has done. And that's what's intimidating when you're comparing yourself to someone, because you're comparing your worst, lowest ground zero to someone's like biggest success ever.
Yeah.
And that's what becomes so scary. And that's what really keeps people from just starting in the first place, because it's like, well, I don't see any logical or realistic path for me to get from where I am to where they are. And it's like two things. One, you probably won't, because that's them and then you're you, and you need to differentiate the two. And then second thing is just like if that is to be true, then so what? Like you should, it shouldn't be a hindrance to your effort.
Yeah. And I mean, most people who share their failures have already gained success in that area, and they're just going to share the failures that got them to this successful moment in life. Like, most of us don't go, well, I've been trying to do this and I've failed 1 million times and still haven't figured out how to do it, because we don't want to share that part of ourselves. But if we hit something big and we're successful, then we're like, look at all these things that we didn't succeed in. And
Mm,
it's kind of almost like a bragging of, look at all the things I had to do to get here. But very few people on this planet will be in a place of failure where they're still trying to get to some place and be like, come look at all my failures. So it can
yeah,
be intimidating if you're in one of those spaces where you haven't yet succeeded, but that doesn't mean give up. Like that just means keep going.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I completely resonate with that. And one of the things too, like talking about the classes that I teach and kind of having a little bit more of like that motivational aspect to it. Some people will ask, because I usually come to the class and I don't really prepare things. Others, their best practice is to like find quotes that they're inspired by and everything. Mine usually just comes straight from my head and my heart. And what I
Yeah.
tell people ask about it is I'm just like, honestly, when I'm up there and on the mic and I'm saying these things, a lot of it is what I need to hear. Not to be
Yeah.
selfish, I'm speaking to myself through all of you. So, and I just hope that it resonates with you. And I try to make it obviously more of like a group message. It's not like I'm like literally talking to myself, but
You need to study
it does,
for this class. Come on.
yeah, it does end up resonating with people though, because it's like, to your point, most people want to spread positivity, and you were able to create something that people agree with and are connected by it. And it's kind of the same concept, right? It's like the things that you go through in life, more often than not, you're not alone in them. And if you just speak up about it, or if you just share, or open yourself and be vulnerable, you'd be surprised what people are willing to connect with, and what others share commonalities in.
Yeah. I actually had someone who sent me a message that was really powerful for me because under most of my posts, I share quotes by people that I find their quotes. I'm like, wow, that's really powerful. And their message to me was, it's interesting that someone like you would use so many quotes from other people when you have a mountain full of quotes said by you on your positive talks that you could use.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I don't think of that. Like, I rewatch some of mine and I'm just blown away by the things that I've said, because something that I said 6 months ago might be what I need to hear today. And it's like, wow, that's so smart. And it's just like, well, I wasn't in that situation. And it's so important. Like, after this seminar, like, I want to reread some of the books that I've read because I know that they will have a new meaning to me with the new perspective I see currently in life. So it's
Yeah.
all about like realizing that old you still has a lot to teach the new you that has so much more information and a different perspective on life.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I've definitely been in positions where I've seen something or heard something that I've said, or like reread something that I wrote, and I'm like, that was me. Like, you don't realize what you're capable of sometimes, and when you're put in the correct environment, under the right circumstances, you can really surprise yourself. And it's very powerful and impactful to be able to go back and like see those things that have been documented, and for you to realize that like maybe the definition that you have of yourself isn't so accurate after all.
Yeah.
And being willing to like be open about that. But I think also, to your point of using other people's quotes, like that is the definition of a leader, in my opinion, is someone who genuinely feels success by lifting others up.
Yeah.
And if that's something that you're doing naturally, then snaps to you.
I mean, I've definitely been called out by people for quoting people who I have not done research on just because the quote itself is powerful,
Mm.
but the person that said it might be completely against all the values I stand for. So I've definitely learned to do a little bit of research before I quote someone and give them a platform and a stage for their voice to be raised. But I've also come to believe that just because someone has done something bad in their life doesn't mean they're incapable of doing any good or adding any value to the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not a type of person that goes, okay, well, this group of presidents all the way up until this one owned slaves. Therefore, nothing they've ever contributed to the history of this world matters because they were horrible people because they thought that someone should be a slave. And it's like you have to realize that you can act like all of us. I probably am a villain in a lot of people's lives, and that's okay because I'm also a hero in others, a normal bystander in someone else's, and there's not a single one of us that can claim that we are the purest light on this earth that has done no wrong. And
Yeah.
I think it's important for people before they start throwing stones to realize that we could easily put their life on spotlight and probably pick it apart just as easy as well.
Yeah. That's a really powerful, like, uh how do I say this? Like, thought exercise, I would say, of you realizing how many versions of you there are in the world. Like,
Yeah.
every person you've ever interacted with has a version of you in their head. And like
Um,
you are you, and like yes, you can identify things that are facts about you, but who you are to every single person that knows you is different. So there's like thousands of yous, or depending on who you are, millions, billions, whatever it is, of
um,
yous in the world. and and the one that you can control is the one that you know, is the you that you know. um
that's one of
which,
like the biggest concepts I work with clients on. I was like, whose reality have you accepted for yourself? Is it your dad that told you that you're not going to amount to anything? Have you accepted his reality for you? I was like, that sounds like a limiting box of a reality. Like, maybe let's try your best friend. You want to step into that box real quick? And we'll always have a limited box of who we can be if we base it upon someone else, because their reality of us is only based upon the experiences they have of us, which is not a lot when you look at how long we've lived on this earth. So living in your reality and realizing there is no box, there is no walls stopping you, you can choose everything you want and make it big or small, and that's your choice.
yeah, yeah. And that's a beautiful place to work in. I can imagine like the breakthroughs that you get to experience with people. It can be are probably so rewarding. I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of
It can be draining just as much, because you
yeah,
can see such an amazing like person sitting in front of you, and they've just built so many like self-limiting beliefs that it's just like you're going to sit there and peel for days and days and days, and you're like, oh my god, I see so much potential, stop putting, like, they leave and don't talk to me for a week and come back with 20 new layers that I'm like, why did you do this? But when you finally get that breakthrough and you see it like in their face, like everything you've ever said since you first worked with them, like all of it is now accepted, and you're like, thank you for letting me do my job and open you up.
right, right. Like welcome to the party. I'm glad you're yeah.
Welcome to the life that you get to create and not be told how to live it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's very I feel like that is very kind of parallel with the fitness world, me connecting with the people that come and take my classes. I don't personal train, but I can imagine it's a similar concept of like getting people to realize their potential and then also not be afraid of it.
Yeah. I today in Tony Robbins' seminar, he said that energy is a habit. And when he said that, I was just like blown away, because I was like, but what if I like don't sleep? Like that doesn't make sense. And he was like, okay, now put your hands up and just start cheering like you like your best friend just showed up. And he was like, how do you feel? And it was like, well, I mean, I tricked my whole body into forming energy. And he was like, they've literally done studies where they gave people a pill that was supposed to boost their energy, but told them that it was going to do the opposite. And the person's brain literally accepted that it was going to be a depressant, but it wasn't. It was a stimulant. And they still felt tired, because our brains as humans will accept what people tell us. So it's
Yeah.
important for people to realize, like, if you say, I didn't get enough sleep today, I'm going to be exhausted, you will be. Like
Right.
there's an important like thing that your body needs when you sleep, but there's also a way to tell your mind, like, I have to do this, we have to have energy for it, let's do this.
Hmm.
And I was just like blown away by that, because it is something that it's impossible to like get excited and like throw your arms around and not have your energy raised just by doing that. Like you can't sit there and do that and for, let's say, 60 seconds. You can't do it for 60 seconds and your mood not go from here to at least a couple notches up.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the what you tell yourself matters is a huge thing. I had something that I was going to say and then I forgot, but I
It
definitely agree.
disappeared.
I
Well, I see that we have
oh
gone. Oh,
I
Go for it.
remember. I'm gonna say, yeah, then we can close out. But I was listening to a podcast this morning about sleep, and it was talking about like different reasons why you can't sleep. But one of the things that they were talking about was saying like how easy it is to keep yourself awake versus force yourself to sleep. And I was thinking about that. I was like, yeah, it very much has to do with like you telling yourself, I have to be awake, I have to do this, I have to do that, and like what your brain is capable of. But
Yeah.
that's what I on that.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that that's an amazing way to end because going to sleep soon anyway.
Yeah,
But thank you so much for jumping on here and doing this. I absolutely enjoyed this conversation and definitely hope that we can do something in the future.
absolutely. I would love to. And again, thank you so much for having me.
No
Yeah,
problem.
look forward to the new friendship.
Most definitely. You have a good rest of your night.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.